Hello and welcome, Rangers. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Stan.
Hello and greetings.
The first episode of the Oliver podcast is going to deal with Tommy's childhood. And the reason Tommy's getting his own podcast is because we would have probably started it with the Green Ranger podcast. But the problem is Tommy takes on so many different colors over the course of his Ranger career that he'd be bouncing between like probably 4 or 5 podcasts. It made more sense to just give him his own. Most Rangers who star in 2 different seasons or something usually only get up to 2 colors. Not Tommy. Tommy, though, has one of the more tragic backstories. Part native, his actual surname was originally Trueheart. His parents seem to have gone missing, with Tommy, essentially according to the comics and hinted at in the TV series, left on the side of the road.
After his parents were most likely killed.
Normally, we don't consult with the comics, but there's very little sources as to Tommy's childhood. Regardless, it seems that Tommy's early childhood losses and the separation from his older brother, whom he soon forgot for a while, left him fairly scarred. So that the Tommy we see in the TV series is a rather timid young boy who, once attached to people, is very keen to maintain that connection, but he's afraid of making connections, at least when he's early on the Green Ranger. He also lacks confidence in himself, seems to struggle with self-esteem from what can be discerned. When Goldar uses this one screen to show all of Tommy's greatest moments, Tommy admits that he probably would have given in if it wasn't for the inspiring example he had kind of set for himself there. He had no idea he was doing such great work as a ranger. In the context that he didn't think about the difference he was making, so that when he saw it, he went, oh wow, I was making a difference. Tommy, though, comes from a long line of guardians, as the Trueheart line are guardians of an ancient power connected to the Zeo crystal. There's greatness in their blood. That said, it is not as a Trueheart that Tommy's greatest acts performed, it's as an Oliver. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Oliver, were apparently a loving set of parents, yet Tommy always felt a little alone and yearned for, his true heritage. But at the same time, he felt ashamed that he longed to know who he was adopted from, as he felt it was a betrayal of his parents. He's also Métis, so he's half native, half white. While familiar with the language of Portuguese, thanks to his native half, is ultimately divided between 2 bloodlines. A lot of Métis feel a certain division caught between either one side or the other before they're either thrust in one direction or the other. It is a fairly sad situation to be in.
And with adoption, an aspect of that is very natural to occur. To have forgotten his family as well, where he comes from, is a question even to himself.
But his grandfather could not cross over because part of his spirit was connected to that ancient Zeo power, as well as wishing to make sure that Tommy was okay and taken care of, because that grandfather passed away worrying about Tommy. In turn, his older brother apparently also took an interest in martial arts and was a fairly strong and stalwart individual. You could see that martial arts is almost in the bloodline. Both of them would have a heroic, noble, and kind side to them. Tommy demonstrates frequently, but both his brother and Tommy seem to have a bit of a temper, which, seeing where he comes from, there's another side to Tommy that's interesting, because Kim, at the beginning of Power Rangers, is a woman who feels very alone. And any discussion of Tommy has to involve Kimberly at some point. Tommy is someone who's been alone his entire life, up to his appearance in Green with Evil. It's why he's so susceptible to Rita's hypnosis at the start. Preys upon his loneliness and his sense of loss. That said, Kimberly is in a similar situation, except where Tommy was found on the side of the road as a child, probably like 3 years old or something. Kimberly was someone who was abandoned by her parents, left with her grandmother. So that, in a way, both of them were left alone with individuals who are not their parents. Much as we might say it's love at first sight between the two, I'm not going to dispute that. But the thing is, it's also, in a way, a bond that I don't think Tommy ever had with any other love interest, or Kim with any other. Because the minute they look at each other, they share the same pain.
Something resonated.
What's more is that the two seem to both lack confidence, self-esteem, and they both seem lost in the work in a way, with Tommy ultimately being fairly mature and Kimberly having a very immature side at the start. Ultimately, they're very patient with each other. They both seem to understand each other Much as he's the guardian or the rock eventually for Kimberly and Billy, Zach, Trini, and Jason seem to treat him like a kid brother because they seem to think of him as just a lost little boy who needs their protection. As the White Ranger, it's impossible to see that with Tommy, but as the Green Ranger, he very much was a lost little boy.
And the powers fizzling in and out would have an effect on his confidence, because here it is, he has the power that could help, but he can't.
But on the other hand, there's another side to his childhood. Tommy is a boy with a lost parentage. He is the divine child archetype at the beginning. What that means is that it's the precursor, the child version of the king archetype. One aspect in old literature about the divine child is that he comes from the true royal line in a way. In Power Rangers, I guess you could say it would be some sort of connection to the power. With Tommy, that connection comes from his grandfather. On the other hand, oftentimes certain types of characters have mysterious backstories. If you look at King Arthur, yes, he's the son of Uther, but he's also adopted a lowly baron. You have Superman, who's sent off to Earth to be adopted. The adoption childhood story arc is a common trope, semi-divine characters.
It even goes back to the Bible with Moses.
You have Heracles in Greek mythology, who, yes, Alcmene is his mother, but Amphitryon is made to adopt him and raise him as his own. And you have Sigurdur in Norse mythology, who's adopted by a king who was a friend of sorts of Sigmundur after Sigmundur's death. Tommy, as a character, archetypally, is coming in a long tradition of kingly archetypes. That's where his connection with Kim is also very archetypal and mythological. It's rather reminiscent in a lot of ways of Brynhildr in Sigurdur, or even Roland and I think it's Ode. This is a very old trope, and it's played to perfection with Tommy. And GDF, bless his soul, ended up doing a fantastic job showing all these layers of Tommy and the lost boy that's in there. Essentially, yes, a man without a past is a man without a future, but he discovers that he needs to stop beating himself up, stop feeling alone, and reach out and accept the helping hand that others provide to him. Be that helping hand from Jason, Billy, Zach, or Kimberly. Like we said, Kimberly and Tommy's bond, once you see Zeo, becomes a very fascinating relationship because you realize they were both lost and they needed each other. Anyways, I think that's it. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button as though you were Tommy smash kicking it.